The red warning lights flashed across the command center of Kepler Station like angry eyes in the darkness. Commander Vex Karan stood before the main display screen, his blue skin marked with worry lines that had grown deeper over the past 3 weeks. The massive Turian watched the enemy ships circle his home like hungry predators. "Shield generators at 12%, reported Zara, the young Asari at the defense console. Her voice shook despite her efforts to stay calm. The north sector took another direct hit. "We lost 2 more mining platforms." Vex's mandibles clicked together in frustration. The Vorthak Syndicate had arrived without warning, dropping out of hyperspace with enough firepower to crack a moon. Their black ships moved like sharks through space, each one bristling with weapons designed to capture rather than destroy. The pirates did not want to blow up Kepler Station. They wanted the people inside it. "How many ships do they have left?" Vex asked. 15 cruisers and about 30 smaller attack craft, answered Jorik, the station's chief engineer. The stocky Zalari's crystal-like skin reflected the red warning lights. "They lost 3 ships when they tried to ram our outer defenses, but it barely slowed them down." Vex looked around the command center at the faces of his people. There were only about 2,000 souls on Kepler Station, but they came from 12 different species. They had come to this remote corner of space to mine rare crystals and study strange energy readings. They never expected to become heroes in a war they did not start. The station shuddered as another blast hit the shields. Sparks flew from damaged control panels and the lights flickered for a moment before the backup power kicked in. "Sir, we're getting reports from Deck 7, said Marcus, one of the few humans on the station. He worked in the communications department and had been trying to reach anyone who might help them. "The Vorthak are starting to cut through the outer hull with plasma torches." Vex closed his eyes for a moment. He had fought in the Galactic Defense Force for 20 years before retiring to this quiet mining station. He had seen wars that lasted decades and battles that killed millions, but he had never felt as helpless as he did right now. "Any response to our distress signals?" he asked Marcus. The human shook his head sadly. "Nothing, sir. We're too far from the main shipping lanes. The nearest Defense Force patrol is 6 days away, and that's if they left right now." 6 days. Vex looked at the shield display again. They would be lucky to last 6 hours. The Vorthak Syndicate was known throughout this part of the galaxy as slavers and killers. They would take anyone they could use and kill the rest. Vex had heard stories of entire colonies that simply vanished after the black ships arrived. The survivors were sold to work in mines or fight in illegal combat arenas on the rim worlds. "Commander," Zara called out, her voice tight with fear. "They're moving into attack formation. All ships are targeting our main shield generator." On the screen, the enemy fleet arranged itself like a spear pointed at the heart of the station. The largest ship, a massive cruiser with skull markings on its hull, moved to the front of the formation. Vex recognized it from intelligence reports. It was the Death's Head, flagship of Captain Zorvak the Butcher. "All civilians to the intersections," Vex ordered. "Security teams to defensive positions. If they break through, we make them pay for every meter." But everyone in the command center knew the truth. Kepler Station had mining equipment and basic defensive systems. The Vorthak had military-grade weapons and the experience of 100 raids. This was not going to be a fair fight. The Death's Head fired first. A beam of pure energy lanced out and struck the main shield generator. The station's defenses held for a moment, then began to buckle under the assault. The other ships joined in, and soon the space around Kepler Station lit up like a deadly fireworks show. "Shields at 8%, Zara reported. 6%. 4%. Vex watched his home die before his eyes. The outer hull began to glow cherry red from the heat of the energy weapons. Metal started to buckle and warp. In the distance, he could see small Vorthak attack craft getting ready to launch boarding parties. 2%, Zara whispered. The commander thought about his wife and children back on the Turian homeworld. He had sent them a message 3 weeks ago telling them he loved them. He hoped they would remember him as someone who tried to protect innocent people, even when there was no hope left. "Shields down," Zara announced, and her voice broke on the last word. The command center fell silent except for the sound of alarms and the distant rumble of the Vorthak ships moving closer. Vex drew his sidearm and checked the charge. Around him, the other officers did the same. They would not go quietly into the dark. "It has been an honor serving with all of you," Vex said quietly. "Remember, we fight not because we can win, but because it is right." On the main screen, the boarding pods launched from the enemy ships like angry hornets. Soon the Vorthak would be inside the station, hunting through the corridors for anyone still alive. Vex had read their files. Captain Zorvak liked to take his time with prisoners. The lucky ones died quickly. The first explosion came from the docking bay as the boarding pod smashed through the weakened hull. Emergency force fields flickered and failed. The sound of laser fire echoed through the station's metal bones. Marcus was still trying his radio, broadcasting on every frequency he could find. "This is Kepler Station. We are under attack by the Vorthak Syndicate. Please, if anyone can hear this, we need help. We have civilians, including children. Please, someone help us," but space remained silent. No one was coming. They were alone in the dark, forgotten by a galaxy that had better things to worry about than one small mining station. "They're in Section C," reported a security officer over the comm, moving toward the main population areas. "We're falling back." Vex looked around the command center one last time, at the control panels where good people had worked to build something peaceful in this dangerous part of space, at the star charts that showed their dreams of expansion and exploration, at the faces of friends who had become family over the years. "Destroy all computer records," he ordered. "Don't let them learn anything about our people or our technology." As his officers began wiping the computer systems, Vex allowed himself one moment of anger at the unfairness of it all. They had done nothing wrong. They had just wanted to build a life among the stars. But the galaxy was a cruel place, and good intentions were not enough to stop evil from winning. The sound of laser fire was getting closer now. Soon Captain Zorvak would be here, and the last free people of Kepler Station would make their final stand. Vex gripped his weapon tighter and waited for the end to come. The sound of cutting tools grew louder in the corridors outside the command center. Vex could hear the Vorthak warriors getting closer, their harsh voices echoing off the metal walls as they hunted for survivors. The air recycling system had been damaged in the attack, and smoke was starting to fill the room. "Sir," Marcus said suddenly, looking up from his communication console with confusion on his face, "I'm getting some strange readings on the long-range sensors." Vex did not look away from the sealed door. "What kind of readings?" "Something big just dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. But the energy signature is wrong. It doesn't match anything in our database." Zara checked her instruments and frowned. "He's right, Commander. There's definitely something out there, but I can't identify it. The computer keeps saying it's impossible." "Impossible how?" Vex asked, finally turning away from the door. "The mass readings say it's bigger than a battleship, but the energy output is too low for something that size, and the hyperspace exit signature is completely different from any known drive system." On the main screen, the Vorthak ships continued their attack on the station's outer hull. Captain Zorvak's flagship had moved closer, and Vex could see the skull markings painted on its black armor. The pirate captain was probably enjoying this. He liked to watch his victims suffer before the end. "Could it be a Defense Force ship?" asked Jorik hopefully. Marcus shook his head. "No, sir. I know all their ship types. This is something else entirely." Suddenly, the station's proximity alarm started screaming. Every warning light in the command center turned bright red, and the computer's voice filled the air with urgent announcements. "Warning. Large mass detected. Warning. Unknown vessel approaching at high speed." Vex spun back to the main screen just in time to see something impossible. The space between Kepler Station and the Vorthak fleet began to twist and bend like water going down a drain. Reality itself seemed to stretch and tear as something massive forced its way into normal space. The ship that emerged from the swirling vortex was like nothing Vex had ever seen. It was huge, easily 3 times the size of the Vorthak flagship, but it looked completely different from any military vessel in the galactic database. Where most warships were sleek and smooth, this one was angular and brutal. Its hull was dark gray metal covered in thick armor plating. Weapon ports dotted its surface like the eyes of some ancient predator. "By the spirits," Zara whispered. "What is that thing?" The unknown ship hung in space for a moment, and Vex could feel its presence like a weight pressing down on his mind. Even through the metal walls of the station, he could sense something dangerous about the vessel. It radiated menace like heat from a fire. The Vorthak fleet had stopped their attack on the station and turned to face this new threat. Their ships spread out in battle formation, but Vex could tell they were just as confused as everyone else. Captain Zorvak's flagship moved to the front of the group, weapons charging for combat. Then the strange ship began to broadcast on all frequencies. The voice that came through the speakers was unlike any Vex had heard before. It was smooth and controlled, but underneath the calm words was something that made his scales crawl. Attention, Vorthak vessels. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth ship Retribution. You are attacking innocent civilians. You have 10 seconds to withdraw from this system or we will open fire. United Earth ship? Vex had never heard of any species called humans, or any nation called Earth, but there was something about the captain's voice that made him believe she was very serious about her threat. The response from the Vorthak flagship came quickly. Captain Zorvak's voice was full of anger and disbelief. Unknown vessel, you are interfering with a legitimate salvage operation. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. Salvage operation? Captain Chen's voice was colder now. I see 15 military cruisers attacking a civilian mining station. I see boarding pods full of armed pirates, and I see you have 5 seconds left. Vex watched the tactical display as both fleets prepared for battle. The Vorthak had numbers on their side, but there was something about the human ship that made him think this would not be the easy victory Captain Zorvak expected. Time's up, Captain Chen announced. What happened next would be burned into Vex's memory for the rest of his life. The human battleship opened fire with every weapon it had, and the space around Kepler Station turned into a vision of hell. The ship's main guns were massive railguns that fired solid metal slugs at incredible speeds. When they hit the Vorthak cruisers, the results were devastating. Armor plating that could stop energy weapons crumpled like paper. Entire sections of enemy ships simply vanished in clouds of metal debris, but the railguns were just the beginning. Missile ports opened along the human ship's hull and launched dozens of projectiles at the enemy fleet. These were not normal space-to-space missiles. As they flew toward their targets, Vex realized with shock that they were nuclear weapons. The humans were firing atomic bombs like they were standard ammunition. The first missile struck a Vorthak cruiser and turned it into a miniature sun. The explosion was so bright that the command center's screens automatically dimmed to protect everyone's eyes. When the light faded, there was nothing left but glowing gas and twisted metal. Impossible, Jorik breathed. They're using fusion weapons in ship-to-ship combat. That's insane. But the human ship was not finished. As the Vorthak fleet tried to recover from the initial attack, beam weapons opened fire from every part of the battleship's hull. These were not the precise energy weapons used by galactic military forces. They were wide, unfocused streams of superheated plasma that cut through space like giant swords. The Vorthak tried to fight back, but their weapons seemed weak compared to the raw power of the human arsenal. Energy beams that could crack a planet's crust barely left scorch marks on the battleship's thick armor. The human ship pushed forward into the enemy formation like an unstoppable force of nature. Sir, Zara said, her voice full of amazement, the human ship is not using standard tactics. They're not trying to disable the enemy vessels. They're trying to completely destroy them. Vex watched as another Vorthak cruiser exploded under the human assault. The alien ship was right. Most space battles were fought with precision and restraint. Ships targeted engines and weapon systems to disable their enemies without unnecessary loss of life. But the humans were fighting like wild animals, striking to kill with every shot. A smaller Vorthak ship tried to flee, but the human battleship turned one of its massive railguns on the escaping vessel. The metal slug caught the pirate ship in the rear and tore it in half. Both pieces tumbled through space, leaking atmosphere and bodies. This is Captain Zorvak, came a desperate voice over the radio. All ships fall back. Repeat, all ships fall back to hyperspace immediately. But it was too late. The human ship had moved into the middle of the Vorthak formation and was firing in all directions. Ships exploded around it like fireworks, but the battleship's shields held against everything the pirates could throw at it. In less than 10 minutes, it was over. The mighty Vorthak fleet that had terrorized this part of the galaxy for years was nothing but burning wreckage floating in space. Only 3 ships managed to escape to hyperspace, including Captain Zorvak's damaged flagship. The human battleship hung in space among the debris of its enemies, its weapons still glowing hot from the battle. Slowly it turned toward Kepler Station, and Vex felt a chill run down his spine as those massive gun barrels pointed in his direction. Kepler Station, this is Captain Chen. Are you all right in there? We're reading life signs, but your hull has taken some damage. Vex looked around the command center at his people. They were all staring at him, waiting for orders. What did you say to a species that could destroy an entire pirate fleet in 10 minutes? This is Commander Korin, he said carefully. We are alive and grateful for your assistance. But I must ask, who are you? What is Earth? There was a pause before Captain Chen answered. When she spoke again, Vex could hear something like amusement in her voice. Earth is our homeworld, Commander. We're new to this part of the galaxy, but we try to help when we can. Would you like us to send some repair teams over? Your station looks like it needs some work. The moment the human battleship opened fire, Vex knew he was watching something that would change everything. This was not a battle between military forces using accepted rules of warfare. This was pure, savage destruction, unleashed by a species that seemed to view combat as a primal force of nature. The Retribution moved through the Vorthak formation like a predator among prey. Its massive railguns fired continuously, sending streams of metal death across space. Each shot hit with the force of a falling asteroid, punching through armor that had protected the pirates through dozens of raids. Look at their targeting patterns, Zara said, her voice filled with disbelief. They're not going for weapons or engines. They're aiming for the reactor cores. Vex watched the tactical display as another Vorthak cruiser died in nuclear fire. The human ship was indeed targeting the most vulnerable parts of each enemy vessel, but not to disable them. They wanted total destruction, complete elimination of the threat. A group of smaller Vorthak attack ships tried to overwhelm the human battleship by attacking from multiple directions at once. It was a smart tactic that had worked against Defense Force vessels in the past. But the humans were ready for it. The Retribution's point defense systems came alive with streams of projectile fire. These were not energy weapons that could be blocked by shields. They were physical bullets, thousands of them, creating a wall of metal around the human ship. The Vorthak fighters flew straight into this deadly cloud and were torn apart like insects in a storm. Impossible targeting speed, Jorik muttered, studying the sensor readings. Their computers are tracking and destroying multiple targets simultaneously. How is that possible? But Vex was focused on something else. The way the human ship moved through space was unlike anything he had seen in 30 years of military service. Most warships were careful and precise, maneuvering to avoid damage while engaging the enemy. The Retribution fought like it welcomed pain, charging straight into the heaviest fire and absorbing punishment that would have crippled any other vessel. Captain Zorvak's flagship tried to use its superior speed to get behind the human ship, but the Retribution simply spun in place and fired its rear weapons. The massive battleship had guns pointing in every direction, turning it into a sphere of death that could strike at any target regardless of position. They're not just destroying ships, Marcus said quietly. They're sending a message. Vex understood what the human meant. Every pirate in this part of the galaxy would hear about this battle. They would learn that there was a new species in space, one that did not negotiate with slavers or show mercy to those who preyed on the innocent. A damaged Vorthak cruiser tried to surrender, broadcasting on all frequencies that they were laying down their weapons. Most civilized species would have accepted the surrender and taken prisoners according to galactic law. The humans had a different response. The Retribution's main gun spoke once, and the surrendering ship vanished in a ball of plasma. No prisoners, no mercy. Only total annihilation of the enemy force by all the gods, Vex whispered. They're not taking any survivors. The battle was becoming a massacre, but Vex found that he could not feel sorry for the Vorthak pirates. These were the same beings who had enslaved children and murdered entire families. They had shown no mercy to their victims over the years. Now they were learning what it felt like to face an enemy that was stronger and more ruthless than they were. Captain Zorvak himself tried to escape in his flagship, but the Retribution was faster than it looked. The human battleship caught up with the fleeing pirate vessel and disabled its engines with surgical precision. Then it did something that shocked everyone watching. Instead of finishing off the helpless ship with its main guns, the Retribution moved alongside the Vorthak flagship. Airlocks opened on both vessels, and Vex realized with amazement that the humans were preparing to board the enemy ship. They're going after Zorvak personally, he said. They want to take him alive. Through the station's external cameras, Vex watched as armored figures crossed from the human ship to the pirate vessel. The humans moved with mechanical precision, their powered armor making them look like walking tanks. Within minutes, the sounds of fighting could be heard over the radio as they battled through the Vorthak ship's corridors. The boarding action was swift and brutal. The human Marines fought with a combination of advanced technology and primitive savagery that overwhelmed the pirate crew. They used energy weapons and grenades, but they also carried what looked like metal blades for close combat. "Captain Zorvac is in custody," came a calm voice over the radio. "Ship secured. No human casualties." Vex shook his head in amazement. The humans had just stormed a ship full of experienced pirates and come out without losing a single person. Either they were incredibly skilled or incredibly lucky, but the battle was not quite over. 3 Vorthax ships had managed to reach the edge of the system and were preparing to jump to hyperspace. For a moment, Vex thought they might escape to spread word of the human capabilities to other pirate fleets. The Retribution had other plans. Long-range missile tubes opened along the battleship's hull, and a dozen projectiles streaked across space toward the fleeing ships. These missiles were different from the nuclear weapons used earlier. They moved faster and seemed to bend space around them as they flew. "Hyperspace interdiction warheads," Zara breathed, reading the sensor data. "They're preventing the ships from jumping." The missiles exploded around the escaping vessels, creating fields of twisted space-time that made hyperspace travel impossible. The Vorthax ships found themselves trapped, unable to flee but too far away to fight back effectively. The Retribution's main railgun spoke 3 times. 3 massive slugs crossed the distance in seconds and turned the remaining pirate ships into expanding clouds of debris. The entire Vorthax fleet had been eliminated in less than 20 minutes. Silence fell over the command center of Kepler Station. Everyone stared at the screens, showing the aftermath of the battle. Where moments before there had been 15 enemy cruisers and dozens of smaller ships, now there was nothing but wreckage and the slowly cooling glow of nuclear explosions. The human battleship hung in space among the remains of its enemies, seemingly undamaged despite the intense fighting. Its weapons were powering down, but Vex could still feel the menace radiating from the vessel like heat from a forge. "Kepler Station, this is Captain Chen. The immediate threat has been neutralized. We're detecting multiple hull breaches on your station. Do you require assistance?" Vex realized that everyone was looking at him, waiting for his response. "What did you say to beings who had just saved your life by committing what could only be called genocide?" The humans had not just defeated the Vorthax fleet. They had erased it from existence. "Captain Chen," he said carefully, "we are grateful for your intervention. Yes, we could use help with repairs and medical assistance for our wounded." "Understood, Commander. We're launching rescue shuttles now. Our medical team will treat your injured and our engineers will help patch your hull breaches. We should have you stable within a few hours." As the first human shuttles appeared on the sensors, heading toward the damaged station, Vex found himself wondering what kind of species humanity really was. They had the technology to build ships that could destroy entire fleets, but they also seemed willing to risk themselves to help strangers. "Sir," Marcus said quietly, "I've been monitoring the debris field. There are no life signs. None at all. They killed every single pirate." Vex nodded grimly. The humans had not just won a battle. They had sent a message that would echo across the galaxy. Anyone who preyed on the innocent would face consequences more terrible than they could imagine. But they had also saved 2,000 lives on Kepler Station. Men, women, and children who would have been dead or enslaved within the hour were now free because these strange new beings from Earth had decided to help. "Prepare to receive the human rescue teams," Vex ordered. "And send a message to Defense Force headquarters. Tell them that everything has changed. There's a new player in the galaxy, and they fight like nothing we've ever seen." As the human shuttles docked with the station, Vex wondered if he was witnessing the beginning of a new age among the stars. An age where the strong protected the weak, and evil was met with overwhelming force. The humans called themselves the good guys, and after watching them fight, Vex was beginning to believe them. The first human to step through the airlock was not what Vex had expected. After watching their ship tear apart an entire pirate fleet, he had imagined warriors 10 feet tall with fangs and claws. Instead, he found himself looking at a woman barely 5.5 feet in height, with short brown hair and calm blue eyes. "Commander Corrin?" she asked, extending a gloved hand. "I'm Lieutenant Commander Sarah Mitchell, Chief Medical Officer of the Retribution. Captain Chen sent me to assess your casualties and coordinate relief efforts." Vex took her hand carefully, surprised by the strength of her grip. Despite her small size, there was something about the human that commanded respect. Maybe it was the way she moved, like a predator that was temporarily at rest but ready to spring into action at any moment. "We have 17 wounded," Vex replied. Most are suffering from smoke inhalation and minor burns from the hull breaches. But we also have 3 critical cases who were injured when the Vorthak boarding pods hit the outer sections. We'll take care of them, Mitchell said confidently. My team is the best in the fleet. May I see your medical bay? As they walked through the station's corridors, Vex noticed more humans arriving through other airlocks. They were all shorter than the average galactic citizen, but they moved with a fluid grace that spoke of excellent physical conditioning. Their equipment was clearly advanced, but it had a rugged, practical look that suggested it was built for harsh conditions. If you don't mind me asking, Vex said as they reached the medical center, how long has your species been traveling in space? Officially, about 50 years since we developed FTL travel, Mitchell replied, immediately going to work on one of the injured Zalari miners. But we've been fighting wars for thousands of years. It's what we're good at. The human medical team worked with impressive efficiency. Their technology was different from standard galactic equipment, but it seemed to be just as effective. More importantly, they treated every patient with the same care, regardless of species. Your people seem very calm for beings who just fought their first major space battle, observed Dr. Kellen. The station's Asari physician, one of the human medics, a young man with dark skin and quick hands, looked up from his patient. First major battle? Ma'am, the Retribution has been in 17 fleet actions in the past 2 years. This was actually pretty routine for us. Dr. Kellen's eyes widened. 17 battles. Against whom? Pirates mostly, the medic replied. Some slavers, a few illegal weapons dealers. The Outer Rim is full of people who think they can hurt civilians without consequences. We've been working to change their minds. As the medical teams worked, Captain Chen herself arrived on the station. She was a compact woman in her 40s with graying hair and eyes that had seen too much combat. When she entered the command center, every human in the room automatically straightened to attention. At ease, she said quietly. Commander Corrin, I wanted to personally thank you and your people for holding out as long as you did. Your defense of this station was brave and honorable. Vex found himself surprisingly moved by the simple words. Captain, it is we who should thank you. Without your intervention, we would all be dead or worse. Chen nodded grimly. The Vorthak are animals. We've been tracking them for months, ever since they hit a human colony transport. They made a mistake when they decided to prey on innocent people. A human colony transport? Vex asked. You have civilians in this part of space? About 200 families were trying to establish a settlement on the far side of the nebula, Chen explained. The Vorthak attacked them during their migration. We managed to rescue most of the colonists, but 43 people died, including 12 children. The captain's voice remained calm and professional, but Vex could see the anger burning in her eyes. This was personal for the humans. They were not just enforcing galactic law. They were seeking justice for their own people. That's why you showed no mercy to the pirates, Vex realized. You were avenging your dead. Partly, Chen admitted, but also sending a message. The Outer Rim has been lawless for too long. Too many species just write off this part of space as too dangerous to patrol. They leave the colonists and miners to fend for themselves against predators like the Vorthak. Jorik, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. But Captain, your ship is alone out here. How can one vessel patrol such a large area? Chen smiled for the first time since arriving on the station. Who said we were alone? The Retribution is the flagship of the Third Frontier Fleet. We have 12 ships patrolling this sector, with more on the way. 12 ships. Vex tried to imagine what a full human battle fleet could do if a single ship had destroyed the Vorthak so easily. The pirates and slavers of the Outer Rim were about to have a very bad time. If I may ask, Vex said carefully, what exactly do your people want out here? Are you planning to establish an empire? Claim territory? Captain Chen looked genuinely surprised by the question. Empire, no, Commander. We're not conquerors. We're just trying to do what's right. She walked over to the main display screen, which still showed the debris field where the Vorthak fleet had died. When we first reached the stars, we found a galaxy that was beautiful and full of wonders. But we also found that it was ruled by fear. Species that were strong preyed on those that were weak. Pirates and slavers operated freely because the major powers couldn't be bothered to stop them. That's the way it has always been, Zara said quietly. The rim worlds are too far from the core systems. Too expensive to protect. Maybe for other species, Chen replied. But humans have a problem with that kind of thinking. We can't just ignore suffering because it's inconvenient or unprofitable to help. Marcus, who had been working on repairing the communication systems, looked up from his console. "Captain, if you don't mind me asking, what's Earth like? Is it a military world?" Chen laughed, and the sound was surprisingly warm. "Earth? No, it's mostly farmers and artists and people who just want to live in peace. We have cities full of musicians and poets. We have vast parks where children play. We have scientists who spend their lives studying flowers." "Then where do your warriors come from?" Vex asked, confused. "That's the thing about humans," Chen said seriously. "We're all warriors when we need to be. The same person who writes beautiful music can pick up a weapon to defend the innocent. The same scientist who studies flowers can design better armor to protect civilians. When our people are threatened, or when we see others being hurt, we become something different." Lieutenant Commander Mitchell joined them in the command center, pulling off her medical gloves. "All casualties stable, Captain. The station's medical team is excellent. They just needed some advanced supplies and equipment." "Good work, Sarah," Chen said. "What's the status on hull repairs?" "Engineering teams are working on it now. We should have the critical breaches sealed within 6 hours. The station will be fully operational in 2 days." As the humans continued their work throughout the station, Vex found himself studying them more closely. They were clearly advanced, both technologically and tactically. But there was something else about them, something that set them apart from every other species he had encountered. They seemed to genuinely care about strangers, not because of trade agreements or political alliances, but because they believed it was the right thing to do. They had risked their lives to save Kepler Station without asking for anything in return. "Captain," Beck said finally, "what happens now? Will you stay to protect us?" Chen shook her head. "We'll remain in the system for a few days to make sure you're secure, but then we have to move on. There are other ships on patrol in this area, though. If you're ever in trouble again, just broadcast a distress signal. Someone will come." "How can you be sure?" Dr. Kellen asked. Captain Chen's smile was fierce and proud. "Because we're human. We don't abandon people who need help. Ever." As Vex watched the human crew work to repair his station, he realized that something fundamental had changed in the galaxy. For generations, the Outer Rim had been a place where only the strong survived and the weak were consumed. But now there was a new factor in the equation. Humanity had arrived among the stars, and they brought with them something that had been missing from galactic civilization for far too long. They brought hope. Hope that someone would answer when you called for help. Hope that evil would be met with justice. Hope that the strong would protect the weak instead of exploiting them. The age of the predators was ending. The age of the guardians had begun. 3 days after the battle, Kepler Station was alive again. The human engineering teams had not only repaired the damage from the Vorthak attack, they had actually improved many of the station's systems. New shield generators hummed with power, and upgraded sensors could detect ships at twice the previous range. Vex stood in the observation deck watching the Retribution prepare for departure. The massive battleship hung in space like a sleeping giant, its weapon ports closed and its engines warming up for the jump to hyperspace. Soon it would be gone, continuing its patrol of the Outer Rim. "Nervous?" asked Captain Chen, who had joined him at the viewing window. "Yes," Vex admitted. "For 3 weeks we faced the worst pirates in this sector. Then you arrived and destroyed them in 20 minutes. Now you're leaving and I wonder what else might be out there." Chen nodded thoughtfully. "There are always predators in the dark, Commander. But there are also guardians now. The Retribution is just one ship in a growing fleet. Every month more human vessels arrive in the Outer Rim." "But why?" Vex asked. "Your people could stay safe in the core systems. You could trade with the established powers and build a comfortable civilization. Why risk yourselves for strangers?" The human captain was quiet for a moment, looking out at the stars. "Do you have children, Commander?" "Yes, a son and daughter back on the Tyrian homeworld." "Then you understand. When I look at the people on this station, I see someone's children. I see families trying to build a life among the stars. I see hope and dreams and all the things that make civilization worth protecting." She turned to face him, and Vex could see the conviction burning in her eyes. "My species has a saying, evil triumphs when good people do nothing. We refuse to do nothing. We refuse to turn away when innocent people are suffering." A communication alert chimed, and Marcus's voice came over the speakers. "Captain Chen, you have an incoming message from Admiral Harrison aboard the Enterprise. Put it through to the observation deck." "Marcus." The wall screen lit up, showing the face of an older human with steel-gray hair and the bearing of a veteran warrior. Behind him, Vex could see the bridge of what was clearly another warship. Sarah, good work with the Vorthak. Intelligence reports that 3 other pirate fleets in the sector have already started moving to safer hunting grounds. Thank you, Admiral. The station's crew showed real courage. They held out for 3 weeks against impossible odds. Admiral Harrison nodded approvingly. Commander Corrin, I presume? I'm Admiral Marcus Harrison, commanding the Human Frontier Defense Force. Your defense of Kepler Station has become something of a legend already. The story is spreading through every outpost and settlement in the Outer Rim. Vex felt his mandibles click in surprise. Legend? Word travels fast out here, the Admiral explained. A mixed crew of civilians holding off the Vorthak Syndicate for 3 weeks? People are calling it the miracle of Kepler Station. You've given hope to every isolated colony in this part of space. But we failed, Vex protested. If Captain Chen hadn't arrived, we would all be dead. You didn't fail, Captain Chen said firmly. You survived. You protected your people and held the line until help could arrive. That's what heroes do. Admiral Harrison leaned forward on the screen. Commander, I have a proposition for you. The Frontier Defense Force is establishing a network of protected settlements throughout the Outer Rim. Kepler Station would be perfect as a regional command center. Command center for what? Vex asked. For hope, the Admiral replied. Every settlement that joins our network gets communication equipment, improved defenses, and the promise that if they're ever in trouble, help will come. In return, they serve as safe harbors for our patrol ships and help coordinate rescue operations. Vex looked around the observation deck at his senior staff, who had gathered to hear the conversation. They were all watching him expectantly, waiting for his decision. What would this mean for our independence? He asked carefully. Nothing changes, Captain Chen assured him. You govern yourselves, make your own laws, trade with whoever you want. We're not interested in building an empire. We just want to make sure that when someone calls for help, someone answers. Zara stepped forward. Commander, I've been monitoring communications across the sector. 17 settlements have already joined this network. Pirate attacks in the protected zones have dropped by 90%. Because the pirates know that attacking a protected settlement means facing the entire Frontier Defense Force, Admiral Harrison explained. We've made it very clear that we consider any attack on our friends to be an attack on humanity itself. Jorik raised his hand nervously. Admiral, what happens if you face an enemy you can't defeat? What if someone stronger than the pirates decides to challenge you? The Admiral's smile was cold and sharp. Then they'll learn why humans have survived and thrived on a death world for millions of years. They'll discover what happens when a species that evolved fighting predators decides to go to war. Vex made his decision. Kepler Station accepts your offer, Admiral. We would be honored to join the network. Excellent. Captain Chen will leave you the necessary equipment and communication protocols. Welcome to the family, Commander. The screen went dark and Captain Chen extended her hand once again. Congratulations. You're now part of something bigger than yourself. As they shook hands, Vex felt a weight lift from his shoulders. For the first time since the attack, he truly believed that his people were safe. Not because they were hidden or protected by distance, but because they had allies who would fight for them. Over the next few hours, human technicians installed advanced communication arrays and defensive systems throughout the station. The new equipment was seamlessly integrated with existing systems, and the humans provided detailed training to the station's crew. This communication array connects you directly to our command network, explained Lieutenant Commander Mitchell. If you're ever in trouble, just activate the emergency beacon. The nearest patrol ship will respond immediately. How many ships do you have? Asked Marcus. Right now? About 30 in this sector alone. But more arrive every month. Earth is building ships as fast as they can launch them. Dr. Kellen looked puzzled. That must be incredibly expensive. How does your government justify the cost? Easy, Captain Chen replied. We tell them the truth, that there are good people in the galaxy who need protection, and it's our responsibility to provide it. As the Retribution prepared for final departure, Captain Chen gathered the station's senior staff in the command center. I want you all to understand something important. This network we're building isn't just about military protection. It's about creating a community. She activated a holographic display showing the Outer Rim sector. Dozens of star systems were highlighted in blue, representing settlements that had joined the protection network. Each of these worlds shares information, resources, and support with the others. When the mining colony at Rigel 4 needed medical supplies, the agricultural world at Tau Ceti sent them within days. When pirates hit the research station at Wolf 359, 3 neighboring settlements immediately offered to take in refugees. "You're building a civilization," Vex realized. "We're helping you build one," Chen corrected. "Humans are just the catalyst. The real work is being done by people like you, people who choose to stand together instead of standing alone." As the Retribution finally departed, Vex stood on the observation deck watching it disappear into hyperspace. The massive battleship was gone, but somehow he felt safer now than he had when it was docked at his station. That night, he sent a message to his family on the Turian homeworld. "The frontier is no longer a place of fear," he wrote. "Humanity has arrived among the stars, and they bring with them something we had forgotten. They bring the promise that good will triumph over evil, that the strong will protect the weak, and that no one who calls for help will be abandoned. They call themselves guardians, and I believe them. The age of predators is ending. The age of heroes has begun." Within a year, the protection network had grown to include over 100 settlements. Pirate activity in the Outer Rim dropped to historic lows. The Vorthak Syndicate disbanded after losing 3 more fleets to human patrol ships. Captain Zorvak himself was tried and executed by his own followers for leading them to disaster. But more importantly, the settlements in the network began to thrive. Trade routes that had been too dangerous to operate became busy highways of commerce. Scientific expeditions explored systems that had been written off as too risky. Children grew up knowing that someone would always come if they were in trouble. The humans kept their promise. Whenever a distress call went out, help arrived. Sometimes it was a massive battleship like the Retribution. Sometimes it was a small patrol craft with only a dozen crew members. But someone always came, and slowly the galaxy began to change. Other species started to follow the human example, establishing their own protection fleets and joining the growing network of worlds that refused to let evil go unchallenged. The humans had done more than win a battle against pirates. They had reminded the galaxy what it meant to be civilized. They had shown that strength without compassion was just another form of barbarism, and that true power came from the willingness to risk everything to protect those who could not protect themselves.